Hello there. Thank you for tuning in. Just wanted to explain something that you're watching this, which is my video blog, but I've noticed that many of you, particularly overseas, are just finding the video somewhere and perhaps wondering what it's all about. So my name is Dean Letfus. I live in New Zealand, run a company called Massive Action. You can go to my website, www.massiveaction.co.nz. massiveaction.co.nz, or my blog site is www.massiveaction.tv. And if you're watching this on YouTube, I can only hook videos up for 10 minutes, so when you watch the actual blog coming up in a second, it may cut off early. If it does, please go to www.massiveaction.tv and you can get the rest of it there. See you soon. Bye. Hi there. Okay. We'll get straight into it again. So just to recap very quickly, all I'm dealing with at this point may be like a few series of these, but what I'm dealing with at this point is where you're aware of an area of your life that doesn't function how you think it should, and you've asked God to reveal to you whether there is a root for that, rooted in an event or a series of events or a situation like attempted abortion or adoption or whatever. So something that we can identify, which some of you can relate to and some of you can't. So I asked you to have a think about that and to understand how shame as a result of that event causes us to react and behave, and for many of us, a lot of people in society, we defensively detach, as I talked about yesterday. And as I said today, I want to talk about is unforgiveness or forgiveness. Now, this is a really significant issue, and it's something that is at the core of the dysfunction in our society. The reason that there is unrest in New Zealand between the Maoris, for example, and the Pākehā is because of unforgiveness for past wrongs. Every war going on in the world right now is rooted, and in many of them, you look at the Middle East, you can take that right back to the Bible is where it started, is rooted in unforgiveness. Unforgiveness is the most powerful destructive force on the planet, in my opinion. And many of you will know families that have been split apart through immediate family members who won't communicate with each other. So it's a very evil thing, and it's a natural reaction in many cases, but it's very, very damaging. I want you to understand how the damage is caused. Remember at the beginning of this series I talked about our spirit, our soul and our body. Now what happens is, so we've got our spirit, which is our personality, our character, who we are, our soul, which is our mind, our will and our emotions, and our body. Right, and I've already explained that, but with unforgiveness, where does unforgiveness start? Unforgiveness begins with an event, with us being wronged, right? So the first thing that happens is that we get hurt. Now, where do we feel hurt? Right, in the area of our emotions. And so we've been hurt, and that's perfectly justified, and often that will set up negative thinking about that person. So you've been hurt by somebody, you're just wounded, you're upset, you're angry, you start to think ill of that person, and then your will kicks in and you start to behave differently towards that person, right? Now, what should happen if we are emotionally healthy is that we reach a point where we decide what we're going to do about this. So we would exercise our will in a healthy way, and we would say, okay, there's no point me being angry, the person probably didn't mean it, or even if it was justified, whatever, but we let go of the negative thoughts and emotions, and we choose to forgive, effectively by exercising our will. That's what should happen. What happens instead? We get this going on. We're emotionally upset, we start to think wrong, and we start to act in negative ways towards that person. So at this point, operating in our soul is that we're hurt. Now, when you do not forgive, when you don't have a way to resolve this situation healthily, the hurt comes up here and becomes bitterness. And that wounds us in our spirit. When we become bitter, the phrase bitter and twisted, it's exactly what happens, is that we get damaged in the core of our being. This is not the core of our being. This is where we operate. But the core of our being is in our spirit. Whether you're a Christian or not doesn't make any difference. When you struggle with this, when you allow hurt to turn into bitterness, you get damaged in your spirit. And it's like the very essence, it's like being raped spiritually. The very essence of who you are becomes damaged, and it's self-inflicted, and you don't realize that this is what you are doing. Now, what happens then, the reason it's important to you to understand that we are made up of three parts, is that as bitterness festers in our spirit, what starts to happen is that we will become, there is a range of things that happen that filter back into our soul. Some of us become unbelievably angry. Some of us become unbelievably depressed. And some of us hide that, and we just appear to be extremely driven, or we go completely off the rails. Right, there's a whole raft of things that start to manifest out here again. So it starts here, the damage is done in our spirit, starts to express itself out again through our soul. But the other thing that happens is that because of this bitterness, it's like poison sitting in our spirit. It filters back through our soul and eventually manifests itself in our body. Now, I know some of you are going to go, what a load of nonsense, but I can only tell you from my own personal experience, people who harbour unforgiveness and it's turned into bitterness and it's affecting them in their body. Some of the things that are caused by unforgiveness, the most common one by far is arthritis. Another very, very common one is asthma. And another very common one are irrational fears, fear of the light and the dark and spiders and all that kind of thing. Now, I've literally watched with my own eyes a woman completely crippled with arthritis like this, couldn't hold a pen. She was about 70 years old. She hadn't spoken to her sister, I think, for 50 years or something like that. They'd had an argument when they were young. She was standing in a meeting, I think it was a Bill Sabritsky meeting, I can't remember now, but anyway, I saw her standing there, and God said to her, you need to forgive your sister, and it took all of her will to do it, but she chose to forgive her sister, and while we were standing there watching, her hands went like this, the swelling, the disfigurement, the joint, she was completely healed. Some of you will think, I don't believe you, that's fine, I was there, I saw it with my own eyes. And unforgiveness will operate in your life physically. And I've seen many people instantaneously healed of asthma and delivered from various fears through forgiving somebody who they didn't, in many cases they didn't even realise that the unforgiveness was there. But I know as I speak to this camera that for many of you are going, yep, I know exactly what you're talking about. And so psychosomatic illnesses that you often hear about, where the illness is all in your head. In a sense, it's true, but it's actually coming out of our spirit. It's not in our head; it's coming out of our spirit, and it's very common, much more common than you would think. And so, if you know, as you're watching this video, or over the next few days, again, I'm going to ask you to ask God to show you, is there anybody in my life that I need